Are you ready to jumpstart your next big idea? Then welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. It's all about helping you find your niche, getting the motivation and strategies you need, and growing your ideas into something real.
Welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. Today we are joined by Joe Valley. Now, Joe is the author of a new book titled The Exitpreneur's Playbook. He's also a partner at Quiet Light Brokerage, which is a brokerage here in the online space. He's been in the online business world for over a decade, and we go through some of the main tenets from his new book, which really is the main tenets of what he's learned by buying and selling so many businesses, being involved in so many business sales over the years. Obviously, we're talking business sales and online business sales, and he has some really interesting points that I think all of us can take something from, even if you're not planning on selling your business right now or in the future. We talk about how to plan on selling your business from the beginning rather than when you arrive at the point of wanting to sell. And he talks about what you need to do in order to get ready for a sale. We go through the 5 steps for maximizing value. And one of the biggest points that he really underscores, and something that I hadn't really thought was as important as it was about mitigating risk. He talks about how risk is the biggest factor in a sale. And then he goes through strategies for doing exactly that, mitigating risk on your online business. Basically, at the end of the day, when you mitigate risk, you increase your multiple by quite a bit. It's something that I wasn't aware of. A lot of great tips beyond that, but that was certainly a big takeaway for me. He talks about how building a great business is really the goal of what your online business should be. One that's attractive to a new owner rather than just building a business that makes money. This is a huge selling point as well for a new owner, having a business that is doing something great in the world rather than just making money. So some great business points along the way, even if you're not considering selling right now. The strategies that Joe shares are strategies you can put into play today. And that will give you a better opportunity down the road should you want to sell. And even if you don't, they're great for increasing the value of your business today. Enjoy. Today's show is sponsored by Ahrefs, an all-in-one SEO toolset. Do you want more Google traffic to your website? Are you struggling to rank and not sure what to do about it? Is the idea of hiring an SEO agency outside of your budget? Well, there's a better way. It's called Ahrefs Webmaster Tools, and it's free. This amazing resource will audit your website and prioritize the needed changes you need to make to improve your search rankings. Imagine what you could achieve as more traffic starts to roll in. Beyond more leads and more sales, Ahrefs Webmaster Tools is going to help you analyze backlinks from other sites. It's going to help you find important people who are referencing your content. This could lead to future partnerships and collaborations. If the idea of getting Google to work for you sounds confusing, Ahrefs also has a good number of tutorials on search engine optimization. I personally have used many of them to help myself and my websites. Isn't it time that you started getting a little bit more search traffic? Visit ahrefs.com/webmaster-tools and get this free tool working for you today. We've included a link in the show notes, but again, that's ahrefs.com/webmaster-tools. Thanks again for sponsoring today's episode. All right, welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman, and today we're joined by Joe Valley. Joe, welcome.
Thanks, Jared. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. So, you're the author. I'm going to read it out here so I don't get it wrong. You're the author of the Exitpreneur's Playbook, how to sell your online business for top dollar by reverse engineering your pathway to success. I mean, how can it not be an exciting topic when we spend time talking about selling your business and how to do it better and how to sell it for more?
Yeah, and today more than ever, there's so much happening in the online world, e-commerce world, affiliate world, content world, SaaS world. It's the valuations is going through the roof. So I didn't plan the timing of the book based upon that, but it's worked out pretty well. It's a topic everybody seems to be talking about.
I was going to say it's no secret valuations on online businesses, along with so many other businesses, are going sky high. So I'm sure we'll get into it. But I mean, you kind of lead it in with it. Why don't you give us some of your backstory Tell us how you ended up becoming a bit of an expert here on exiting businesses.
Sure. So I've been self-employed since 1997, very long time. I got some gray on the chin, as you can see. I sold I built, bought, or sold about a half dozen businesses during that time. Mm-hmm. And I sold my last physical products e-commerce business back in 2010 through a company called Quiet Light that I now am a partner at. I took about a year off, enjoyed the process so much doing that. I went back briefly, Jerry, to my media agency, realized why I stopped doing it and loved e-commerce, and then joined Quiet Light back in 2012. There was only three of us then. It was Mark Dowse, the original founder, Jason Yelowitz, who was my broker back in 2010, and myself, and then a part-time admin person. We didn't do big numbers, a couple of $1 million maybe in terms of total closed transactions back in 2012. Very different world and different size transactions than today. And so over the course of the first 3, 4, 5 years there, I ended up becoming the person that closed the vast majority of transactions for the team, upwards of 70, 75% in some years. And we started adding on more advisors back in 2014 and 15. To the point where it made sense. Mark and I became partners in late 17. And in the last 12 months, we've got a total of 15 advisors. They're all entrepreneurs turned advisors. So they're all e-commerce, content, SaaS, some agency entrepreneurs that oftentimes sold through Quiet Light and then joined the team, or bought through Quiet Light, like Walker Deibel, who's also a best-selling author, wrote the book Buy Then Build. He bought through us and then joined the team. Amanda, who joined shortly after I did, has been on the cover of Time magazine for her Pearl importing business. And really smart, talented people. I don't know how I managed to become a partner and technically above them, but it's worked out okay. Anyway, so over the last decade, I've had like 8,000. I tallied it up. It's kind of nuts because I was mostly advising / brokering during that time. 8,000 one-on-one conversations with entrepreneurs. And I've brokered deals for content SaaS. I did an affiliate platform, and I'm no expert, but I brokered a deal on an affiliate platform, lots of e-commerce, lots of FBA, things of that nature. And I found myself kept repeating the same thing over and over again. And no one could really absorb the information in 1, 2, or even 3 phone calls without taking copious notes or recording the calls. And so I said, the hell with this, I got to write it down. And doing it in bits and pieces on the website just didn't make sense. So I set my heart to writing a book. I used a company called Scribe Media, and it's a brilliant process, totally different subject, but it worked out very well. Launched the book in June. And essentially it is going to take someone or the reader through the entire process from, I wonder if I should sell my business, to what's the purpose of selling my business, to how much will I make, what's it worth, and everything in between, from working with an advisor, negotiating with buyers, due diligence, letters of intent, asset purchase agreements, the entire process. And it's not very dry. It's in my voice as I'm talking now. The nice comments that I've gotten is that people feel like they could be sitting across the table from me at a pub having a beer talking about this stuff. So hopefully I've taken a pretty dry subject and made it very absorbable and readable. And the nice thing is it's something that people can refer back to on a regular basis, because it's still a lot to digest.
Yeah, it's a dry topic, but it's not as dry as, accounting or bookkeeping. I mean, it's got this kind of this cherry at the end of it, which is this concept of selling your business. And
I tell stories throughout.
You do.
There's some incredible successes and some epic failures. I do change the names of those folks, but it's very
I thought I had someone
relatable.
Pegged when I read it. I thought I had someone pegged by the name. I guess not.
No, not at all.
Just kidding. You mentioned you had about 8,000 conversations throughout your time about this concept of selling your business. I mean, how many deals have you seen as in your now nearing the decade with Quiet Light, and then maybe before that? Like, how many businesses have you watched or been a part of the sale process?
Yeah, so personally, I've closed about 100 million in transactions.
It's a big number.
It's a lot. It's a big number. And then through Quiet Light during that time, it's been about another $500 million. And those numbers are just climbing incredibly rapidly. We'll close about 250 million in total transactions this year alone,
Wow.
which is up about 70% from the previous year. In terms of the total number of those transactions, I never added them up, but 100 million at, a million a piece on average, because you start off back in 2012, it was 125, 150. Sometimes I did $5,000 or $6,000 deals. Today, the median transaction size in 2021 will be about $2 million. So personally, I'd say 100 to 150. And through the team, hundreds and hundreds, probably close to 1,000.
Wow. Yeah, that gives you a good, kind of a good balance of information to put together in the book. Why don't let's set the stage for the conversation today? Because like I said, I read the book. I have it right here. I highly recommend it, but I have definitely some questions about what you were talking about, and we'll go through. Maybe you have some really good insights into what people can start thinking about as they're processing a business and whether or not they want to get it ready for sale down the road. But maybe set the stage. You alluded to how multiples are increasing, businesses are being sold, online businesses are being sold unlike never before. Can you give us a little more context from your vantage point so that maybe each person listening who maybe owns a website or maybe owns multiple websites or an e-commerce brand or an FBA brand or something, just so people can get an understanding of what the scope of these things are right now, because it is growing rapidly.
Yeah. So there is not one size fits all, just to be crystal clear. If you own a Shopify store and don't sell on a third-party platform and you're doing 5 million in revenue with 20% margins, bottom line, you're a couple $1 million. No, that would be $1 million. And then another one doing 5 million, but they're doing 90% on FBA. Your business is going to be worth more than the FBA business, even if the net numbers are the same, simply because you own the customer. There's less risk, lower risk, higher value. And at the same time, if the buddy sitting next to you is only doing $1 million in revenue, they've got $200,000 in discretionary earnings. That is not worth as much either, because the larger the business, the more valuable, not just in dollars, but it'll fetch a higher multiple as well, because it's more diverse, it's less risk, it's more established, and investors are willing to pay more for lower risk. So multiples have gone up in terms of multiples. Let's talk briefly, though, Jared, multiples of what? And this is where people get really confused. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep it simple. It's a multiple of discretionary earnings, nothing else. It's not a multiple of EBITDA or adjusted EBITDA or net income, definitely not a multiple of net income. A lot of times folks will just run a profit and loss. They'll see the net income number and they'll think, okay, well, that's my earnings. So 3 times that? No, that's awful. Well, if you pay yourself $100,000 and your net income is, $200,000, your discretionary earnings is immediately $300,000, because that personal income for a single owner operator is what's called an add back. So you take the net income plus add backs equals seller's discretionary earnings. And I cover 18 different types of add backs in, I think it's chapter 11. So the multiple of what? Multiple of seller's discretionary earnings. If you have a physical product e-commerce business, the inventory, I don't want to say always, but mostly is sold separately. When you get to 50 million in total transaction value, it'll probably be included. Or if you list your business with a company called Website Closers, they include the inventory in the purchase price. It's not right or wrong. It just makes the listing look a little higher in terms of total multiple. But at the end of the day, the numbers are all the same. Everybody else does it multiple of discretionary earnings plus the landed cost of good sellable inventory on hand at the time of closing. The inventory is always changing.
I was going to say,
easier and cleaner to do it that way.
Yeah, that could depend on just when a latest order has been placed.
Exactly. So now it goes to what are the multiple ranges, right? And how they've gone up. And they have pretty dramatically. So if we go back just, I think 4 years ago, we had, struggles and challenges and in terms of getting people interested in buying online businesses. Actually, I'm going to go back more like 5 years ago, where I would literally list a business for sale, couldn't quite push that 3-time multiple. And if you go to 2.75, it would round up to 8. So I always used to list things, real strong listings, at 2.74, because it would round down to 2.7. In today's world, very, very different. I used to say to clients that, the goal is to get on a call with 3 to 5 qualified buyers in the first 30 to 45 days and get at least one acceptable offer. So look at that, 45 days, one acceptable offer. Today in 2021, year to date, over at Quiet Light, we've had 4.5 offers on every single listing. They're going under LOI within 2 or 3 weeks, which is half the time, third of the time. And they're selling at or over asking price 62% of the time.
Jeez.
And yes, the multiples have gone up pretty dramatically. Again, if I say multiples went from X to Y, it's not quite apples to apples, but that, a 2.74 multiple or 2.7, let's just say it's a $400,000 discretionary earnings business 5 years ago, might have been 2.75, 2.74. Today, that 400,000 in discretionary earnings, depending upon the niche, the growth, the trends, the growth, all of these different things that we'll talk about in a little bit, we're probably starting easily at 3.5 to 4, unless it's trending down and there's some trouble there.
And for context, because I hear it referred to a lot of different ways in terms of the multiple, you're referring to yearly discretionary multiples. So that would be, say, if we did a 3, that'd be easy because if you have $100,000 discretionary income, that'd be a 3x, 3.5 and whatnot. But a lot of people will refer to it also as monthly. And so a 3x would be a 36x monthly multiple because it'd be 12 months times 3. So
right. And that's because of Empire Flippers. Empire Flippers, they're the only ones that do it on a monthly basis.
They are, yeah.
Maybe flipping, some people may individually list it that way, but Empire Flippers will do a multiple of months. For the most part, it's a multiple of the trailing 12 months seller's discretionary earnings. So from an investor standpoint, or a buyer, if you will, they're looking at how many years is it going to take me to break even?
Get my money back.
If I'm investing, buying at a 3-time multiple, it's 100,000. I'm going to earn my money back in 3 years if revenue and profit are flat, right? But
I hope to grow it.
Yeah, the kicker is, if you're selling a business that it's growing 25% year over year, and that continues after closing, and you've got such a meticulous brand and SOPs and team that it's pretty clear that it's going to continue. If it's sold at a 4-time multiple, the investor will actually make their money back in 2.7 years. And so sometimes you as the seller have to do some of that math for the buyer, because even though they may be able to stroke a check for $1 million or $2 or $3 or $5 million, it's they don't quite get that part of it. They look at all the awful things when they're buying a business, not just all the great things that you're very comfortable with, like the fact that you don't have a contract with your content writers or your, manufacturer overseas. That's just the nature of the business. They come in and go, ooh, that's a risk. You don't have any contracts. And they see it completely differently. So you've got to really work with them in building relationship and building trust more than anything else.
That makes sense. Well, and I thought it was important to just set the stage because, a lot of people, have not sold a business before and they don't necessarily go into their business creation with the idea of building it to sell. And a lot of what your book talks about is about how you can't just show up one day and say, oh, I think today's the day I want to sell the business, and expect to get as high of a return as if you had been building it all along and planning on the sale. So I thought it was a good use of time to spend a little time talking about your vantage point on where sales and multiples are going, because they're clearly going up, and people should clearly pay attention to this if they have an online business. Let's talk about the book, and let's really talk, if we could, maybe summarize some of the steps that you have outlined in the book for getting the maximum value out of your business. And then we can go from there into some of the more detailed approaches you have.
Yeah. The first one should be something everybody's doing, but I'm sure they're not. It's not something I did on a regular basis in the middle of my career. I did it at the beginning. I do it now, but I didn't do it in the middle. And that's setting written goals down. And what I talk about in the book is adding something kind of touchy-feely to the goal. So it's statistically proven, if you write down and visit your goals on a regular basis, you are going to be at least 42% more likely to achieve those goals. So in the book, I go through an exercise of asking people to fill in the blanks here. So I will sell my business for blank dollars in the calendar year of blank. And when I do, I will feel a certain way. So it's that last part that's kind of funky, and actually, I think really, really interesting and important. So, an exercise might be, I will sell my business for $2 million in the third quarter of 2022. And when I do, I'll feel unburdened because I'm out of debt. I have money in the bank and I get to spend more time with my family. Those types of things, because you're an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. We've all had some really epically challenging days, weeks, months, and years as entrepreneurs, right? I've been doing it for 24 years now. There've been some years when I've been so excited because I've got a carry forward loss on my tax returns.
Right.
Not really something to be excited about when it happens. So
not what you bring up at the holiday party that year.
Yeah, right. That feeling goal, I think, is really important. But once you've set that goal, it's you got to figure out how to get there to it, right? If you're going to Boise, Idaho, I'm in just north of Charlotte, right? If I want to go to Boise, I know I can hop on I-40 and go west. And maybe eventually find my way there with signs. But if I put it in Google Maps, Google will know exactly where I am now, and it'll chart a direct path to Boise, Idaho, and help me avoid traffic as well. And so what I want people to do once they set those goals is reverse engineer a path to it and figure out exactly what their business is worth today. And we talk about that in terms of calculating sellers' discretionary earnings, in particular, obviously the formula, but then doing a deep dive into your add back schedule, which is something done after you export your P&L from QuickBooks. I've seen it add, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Actually, at a call. Actually, it wasn't a call. I was at a boot camp for 8-figure sellers in October, and doing a fireside chat with one particular guy who was sitting there literally by a fire having a beer, and he said he does about 50 million in revenue, huge profit. Somebody offered him 10 times for his business. And I said, 10 times what? And he couldn't quite answer it, right? Couldn't say 10 times discretionary earnings. Then we started talking about add backs. And he said that I said, do you do an add back for your cash back money or reward points? He goes, oh, actually, that's really cool because I get $50,000 cash back every month. I do credit card stacking, and explain what it is to me. I'm like, okay, did you put that in your add back in your P&L? He goes, what are you talking about? I said, it's an add back. It's a personal benefit. It's an owner benefit. It's an add back and goes below the net income line once you export it. And I walked him through it. It's $50,000 a month, $600,000 a year. And now he renegotiated that back into the P&L. That's a $6 million addition onto the list price of his business because he was offered a 10-time multiple. So paying attention to those numbers and knowing what your value is today will help you get to that goal much, much quicker. And then you got to figure out how many years. It's not just dollars. It's months or years you are away from that as well. And you got to kind of shift your mindset, in my experience. I don't know about you, Jared, but when I first started out as an entrepreneur, all I cared about was making money, right? I needed to serve my clients. I owned a media buying agency at the time, but it was more about money for me. Back in the old days, I used to write down how much I made each week on the palm of my hand. I'd show my wife. I'd show my father. My father thought I was a drug dealer. He's like, what the hell?
Where are you getting that?
What are you doing? Today, though, with 25 years of experience as an entrepreneur, it's more, my mindset is more of not how much money I can make, but how many people can I help? And then ultimately it helps my business and grows my business. So I want people to shift their mindset from, instead of how much money I can make, top line or bottom line, how many people can you help? Think about growing a business, a great business for a great buyer to eventually take over at a great price. The end result will be that you will get maximum value for your business when you make part of this process of shifting that mindset. I've seen it happen time and time again. I had a repeat seller when I was brokering. I'm not actually brokering anymore. I've hung up that hat, if you will, but somebody I sold an affiliate platform for many years ago came back, and he had a pet related business, and he called me. Remember the call. His name's Ryan, great guy. And he said, Joe, look, this is what we're doing. We're having problems with chargebacks. And so here's the plan. We're going to go ahead and get multiple merchant accounts. And once we reach a certain point on revenue on that, we're going to move to another one so that our chargeback percentage overall is always going to be below the minimum of, I think it's 1% before they start getting flagged and big issues. And I said, Ryan, why don't you just fix the issue? instead of gaming the system, fix the issue. Because if you go to sell the business with credit, with multiple merchant accounts and gaming it, you're not going to get the same multiple as you would if you just fixed it. He goes, but my revenue will go down. I'm like, perhaps, but your multiple will go way up. Right. It worked. Ryan waited about a year, fixed it, came back in what was probably worth maybe 2.5 million at the time that we were talking, in terms of a multiple of discretionary earnings that would have been lower because of the chargebacks. He ended up getting 4.75 million when he came back a year later for this particular business, because he built a great business for a great buyer to take over at a great price. The fourth thing that I like to focus on, Jared, is actually creating competition. As I said before, year to date, we've had an average of 4.5 offers on every single listing. I'm not suggesting that everybody has to go with a brokerage firm or an M&A firm or whatever you want to call us. If you want to go out on your own, that's okay. A lot of e-commerce business owners and content owners now are getting emails, snail mails, physical, knocks on the door by these FBA aggregators fulfilled by Amazon, but they're definitely moving off of Amazon as well. And that's okay. It's good. They've pushed multiples up as well, which is great, and pushed people's understanding that they can sell businesses up as well. But don't just talk with one and negotiate with one. That's like walking into the Shark Tank, getting ready to pitch your business and your product, and everybody calls in sick but Mr. Wonderful. You know it's going to be a bad deal if that's the case. We had a situation where a woman that lives not too far from where I am she bought a business in the gaming space, not like gambling, but in board games. And 24 months later, she got an email and a phone call from one of the top aggregators in the business, not to be named. They're good people, by the way. So I don't mean to cut down aggregators. They're actually really very likable people, which kind of makes them a little dangerous. But she got a call from them. And this very likable person went through the P&L, went through the numbers with her, and made an offer of 2.2 million, and explained to her with reason, with math, with logic, why it was only worth 2.2 million. It got a big COVID bump. Absolutely true. She had a hero SKU that represented about 60% of the revenue. Absolutely true. And therefore the multiple was only worth X. And fortunately, she said, I don't know. And she ended up reaching out to me and ended up working with Chuck on the team. We ended up taking on the listing, and she sold it for $5.5 million. So they offered 2.2, and this is mainly because it's one offer. They knew that they weren't competing against anyone else, and they used their intelligence and logic and charm. Again, that's what makes them dangerous, their charm, to almost convince her that her business was worth 2.2 plus 400 in inventory, 2.6 million. She's a very skeptical person of others. She's an immigrant and very, very competitive, and needed to learn more and reach out, and did the right thing in her situation. So she created competition. We ended up with 7 offers on it. It got bid up and sold for well over asking price. The last thing, man, is just learning about deal structures. And as far as the competition, you can Google aggregators and get a list of 100 of them now. They're all over the website. If you want to sell directly to one, do that. And I'm not just talking about FBA businesses, content and Shopify stores can do that as well. The last thing is learning about the deal structures, because even though, somebody, your buddy, your friend, your brother's cousin, whatever, I guess that would be your cousin too, your girlfriend's cousin, says, yeah, man, I sold for 5 times and I sold for cash and got a 5-time multiple. They probably didn't. There's stability payments, which they're holding back 10% of the revenue in escrow for 12 months just to make sure that the business is not going to fall off a cliff. There's earnouts that if your business is trending down or is really risky, or you are not trustworthy, is going to happen. So you got to be a good, trustworthy person. Behave online, please. There's seller notes. There's rolling equity. There's all sorts of things that could benefit you if you learn about the deal structures. And you go into a transaction with a potential buyer or multiple potential buyers with knowledge. Instead of them having all the knowledge and experience, you will have it as well now too. So that's like chapter 15 or 16. I can't remember which one.
Whew, okay. That's a lot. And that almost, I mean, that's a good cliff notes for a lot of the book, although you'd be missing out if you didn't dive in deeper. But okay, let me review it just so I make sure I got it, because I was taking notes. We have setting goals. And I loved your story about putting personal touches to those goals. That's good. That's as an entrepreneur myself, about 20 years now, and I've had those same nights as you have, or long years sometimes. But yeah, so set specific goals, reverse engineering that path, shifting your mindset from making more money into building a business. And I want to ask you a question about that in just a second. Number 4 was creating competition and making sure you have, I guess at the end of the day, multiple offers and people competing for your listing. And then number 5, understand the deal structure, so you actually understand what a sale would look like and how it'd be structured. So you're not going in with them having the keys to the kingdom and you not knowing anything.
Good notes. You got it. You nailed it.
Let me circle back on that, make more money. And you talked about building a great business rather than just a business that makes money, and I think that is a common error in our particular niche that we're in here in the building website business. And I wonder if, I think a lot of it might have to do with a lot of times when you are just building a website, you don't have a storefront with a content site and with an affiliate site. You don't even have customers, really. You're not dealing with the people that are actually buying the product. You're dealing with ad networks. You're dealing with affiliate relationships, but you're not dealing with customers. All this comes together to sometimes make it feel like you don't actually have a business, like you're just making money online. And so maybe talk a little bit more to people who own these businesses that are online websites, that are content sites, that are affiliate sites, maybe even streaming into some FBA type stuff where it can be a little harder to get your perspective wrapped around building a great business for the future buyer.
Yeah. Look, a great business doesn't look like IBM with a sign on the door, right? It doesn't look like that. What I'm talking about is a stable business. They all have risks associated with it, but they're all, it's something that really has legs that's not going to fall apart. It's not a 3-legged stool with one of them broken. So if you cheat, lie, or steal, use black hat or some deep color gray hat tactics to improve your rankings, you're going to get caught eventually. I talk about it in the book, Jared. After I sold my e-commerce business, I bought a content site. And I think I had 42 amazing days. And it's because it got hit by the Penguin update and I lost $250,000. Today, in today's world, in due diligence, that's going to be caught. The backlink profile, whatever you did to cheat, lie, or steal, your buyer is going to find out. They're going to hire a due diligence company, hopefully, right? We talk about it all the time. Even though we only represent the sell side, we're always telling buyers to hire a due diligence company. Centurica is one of them. Chris Yates. Yeah. It's really important to do that. Building a great business that's an affiliate business, just build a good business with good quality content that grows over time. You can do that. You probably know Ewan Finzer, yes? Ewan? Okay. So Ewan, when he launches a content site, he's writing 100 articles up front, 125 articles, and putting them on a niche particular site, a topic, let's call it blue couches, for instance. And then he's letting that traction grow and getting rankings by Google, and then adding the advertising affiliate stuff. It's a legitimate business. It's building a good business that when one gets traction, he'll then, continue to add content and improve that site over time. That's something that can be taken over at low risk by a potential buyer. That's the key thing about building a good business. Can someone else take it over and continue doing what you're doing and grow the business beyond its current heights? Most buyers are not looking to buy a business and have revenue and profit flat. They're looking to, grow it and then someday turn around and sell it for even a higher multiple. So they're not just making money along the way, but they're going to make that money on the exit as well. So content, I sold a content site for just under $9 million, and it was on soap operas. Okay. It's a legitimate business with legitimate foundation, raving fans that came back, every single day, multiple times a day. That's legitimate. Does it feel like a real business to the guy that owned it? Not at first, but it certainly did by the time he sold it for $9 million. right? There's all sorts of different ways to look at it. But the key thing is, what's it going to look like for the next owner of the business? Are you lying and cheating and stealing now so that you can just get some money from that guy? Like the guy I bought it from, he was lying and cheating and stealing. I bought an auto insurance blog specific to the state of Texas. And my plan was to make, have the same kind of site for every state in the country. Well, after 42 days and all of my rankings fell off of page one, that plan sort of fell apart. And he cheated like crazy. The backlink profiles were horrible. We didn't know enough to look back then. So it's just, building a good business. And given the fact that you've been doing this for 20 years, I've been doing it for 24, and most of the people that we work with are doing it right and doing it for a long time, they are sort of building a better business. That's why values are going up as well. It's buyers are starting to realize that, online businesses are real legitimate businesses, and therefore they're selling at a higher multiple. Back 10 years ago, it was so unknown and unsure and risky. And a lot of us were, it wasn't me. It wasn't me doing the black hat stuff. I didn't really understand what black hat was. And that's the truth. I was too ignorant to know how to cheat. But, a lot of it was just get rich quick schemes, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Penguin and the Panda updates you talk about, I mean, they were massive in this industry because it just changed the landscape to building longer term sites, which, I mean, I'm definitely overreaching by saying this, but you could almost hallmark those updates as some of the reasons why multiples have gone up so much, because before those updates, you had no incentive to build but very little incentive to build long-term stabilized assets. Whereas now that's the only way to win in Google with your rankings, also going to drive multiples up. So it's you're exactly right.
Yeah. They pushed it, and it didn't happen overnight. It took many, many years for the multiples to go up, but I think they're up. I don't think they're going to, I don't think there's a bubble in multiples. I think people are starting to really see the value of the businesses. What may happen is, if we have a severe economic downturn, the businesses that are online businesses that want to be sold, they're not going to be earning as much. Right. So, the multiples may remain the same if competition remains the same, but, the value may be lower simply because the discretionary earnings is lower. The multiples may go down a little bit too, though, Jared, because with buyers love growth, right? As I said, 25% year-over-year growth, a 4-time multiple, you get your money back in 2.7 years. But if your business is trending down 25% in the last 12 months, your multiple is going to go from 4 to 2 very, very quickly. Very quickly, because buyers are going to look, okay, well, if I do a forward projection on this multiple, I'm going to be out of money. And I have to do a lot of extra work to put the fires out and plug the holes.
To get it back on the upward. Yeah.
Those are we talk about that in the chapter, what buyers want, and in parentheses, fear, right? Yeah. It's growth, risk, growth, transferability, and documentation. Those are the 4 pillars that have been developed over the last decade. It's what buyers want. And then that 5th pillar, that actually it's the mortar that holds the pillars together, is you, the owner of the business. That's why you have to be a good person and be trustworthy and likable and those types of things. You get more money if the buyer likes you. Let me tell you right now, you get a better deal structure and more money.
Interesting. So you've talked about it. You've mentioned this word a lot so far. I should have been writing down like a little ticker how many times you've said it. And it's that, no, it's good. It's that word risk.
Yeah.
And the reason I want to bring it up is because I have a lot of conversations with other fellow website owners, whether it's on, Facebook chats or Messenger or text or email, and I'll tell you that in our conversations, we talk about growth. We talk about growing sites. We talk about making more money from the websites. I talk to e-commerce people who are talking about these, but people are not talking about risk mitigation as we build out our businesses. But on the buying side or in the transaction side of things, you've talked about it very frequently so far today. And so I think that's one of the biggest things I took from the book is about building your business, not only to grow in profits, but also to mitigate the risk for the future for the future owner. Can you give us some ideas or some tips on things people can be proactively doing to help mitigate risk for a future buyer?
Yeah, the easiest one is just to wait, right? So if you've got a 12-month-old business, your multiple is going to be discounted because there's risk there because your business is young. The first benchmark is really 24 months where we stop seeing discounts because of age. So 24 months old is number one. Number two would be diversification, right? Channel risk. Do you have one channel of revenue or a hero SKU? So if 100% of your revenue comes from tribal fusion, is that a risk? Can you diversify that so that if they decide they're not doing educational content, and I'm not an affiliate marketer, Jared, so I'm probably talking out of my ass here, but you get the point. Yeah. Diversification.
Yep.
If you have a hero SKU doing 70% of your revenue and it's cell phone cases, forget about it. It's huge risk. Your multiple is going to go way down. It's that fear of obsolescence as well, right? Is whatever I'm buying going to be obsolete in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? There's that as well. They sold a
fidget spinners or something.
Fidget spinners is a great example, right? It was all the rage. Look, masks, right? Face masks.
Yeah.
When COVID first hit, we had a client that decided to sell their business, and they had a great business that was, gaiters for fishermen, right? And it had, would help block the sun and everything. But then his revenue went through the roof because people were buying it as something for COVID. And then it turned out gaiters weren't working. They weren't allowed for COVID, right? Well, that's a shame because he bought $600,000 worth of inventory for gaiters. And based upon my math and the numbers, he was going to have it for about 7 years. So that's, that kind of risk. What category are you in? Either if it's a content site, if it's a service, a SaaS business, physical product site. Are you an FBA seller only? Do you sell only in Germany, for instance? Is that a channel risk? All of those things are really important. The other is your staff and your contracts and your agreements. Do you have those firmed up and secured? In most cases, when somebody's selling a business, my advice is don't tell your team, right? I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. He is going to tell his team because he tells his team absolutely everything. And that's okay. When I sold my business, I had one key employee that it was going to be a royal pain in my back if she left. And so I didn't tell her until I was under contract to sell. And then I told her, and in the same breath that I told her, I said, if you transition with a company and stick around for a total of 12 months, I will give you X dollars. And I will release half of it in 6 months and half of it in 12 months. And then we talked about, well, what if they fire her? Things like that. She stuck around for 2 years, but that's a risk as well. Buyers want to buy a business that is not going to have a whole lot of change, right? Especially in the first 6 months that they buy it. They don't want to have to reinvent things. So there's all sorts of different, I talk about 6 different components to that risk pillar in the book, and I give a lot of detail on each and every one.
You also talk in the book a lot about systems and having systems dialed in. That's another, I'd say, weak point for a lot of business owners. We run a bit fast, we run a bit loose. Things are changing and evolving quickly in this industry. SEO's changing, Amazon's constantly changing their policies, FBA, right now with supply shortages, like very difficult, but nonetheless, you talk about its importance to have these sort of manuals, standard operating procedures, systems in place. Can you give us some more information about why that's so important, either to a buyer or just to a business, and then any other tips you want to share with that?
Yeah. And just to comment on the fast and loose, as entrepreneurs, we do run fast and loose. It's because we're, red on the personality chart. We get an idea and we just run with it. We don't need all the details. We just know it's going to work and we go and push forward. And that's what makes us successful and helps us grow businesses. But it does come with problems along the way. Mm-hmm. And the biggest first thing I see on that documentation pillar is people running businesses and they don't have proper P&Ls. And it's very sad because they don't have a sellable business if they don't have a profit and loss statement. well, not everyone is unsellable. I sold a business where Bob, I think he was in the book, if you got to that part, he was retiring at the age of 50 to be a preacher, but he was he had a tech job, and he also had a side business that was making more. He's making $200,000 a year running a side hustle, and his financials were on a napkin and a credit card. He just gave that to his, CPA every year. He got 2 offers, good, strong offers, and they both fell apart in due diligence because the spreadsheet that he put together for me, the P&L, it wasn't a proper P&L. And he wouldn't take my advice and hire a good e-commerce bookkeeper to put it all in QuickBooks. He finally did, spent $1,500 doing it. And then you know what you do then? Then you run the P&L, you export it to Excel, and it matched exactly what he had, but it instilled confidence in the buyers. That documentation instilled confidence. He got, went through the process. We reversed it. We had 3 different offers. He sold it for $50,000 more, and it actually closed. So $1,500 returned $50,000. So the documentation builds trust in the buyer. They say, you are a grown-up. You've got SOPs for SOPs. You've got SOPs for your VA on hiring VAs. You've got SOPs if this goes wrong or that thing goes wrong. And the nice thing about them is that it makes your life as that entrepreneur easier too.
You actually get benefit from it while you have the business.
Exactly. And peace of mind while you have the business. You can go on vacation and there's an issue, you just share a link or something like that, and somebody else can fix it. But it also makes your life easier when you sell it, not just because you're getting more money and instilling trust in the buyer and confidence in the buyer, but for that training and transition period, you don't have to work as hard.
You're not. And we've all heard stories of buyers sellers, as they're selling the site, it becomes all consuming because they're constantly having to get information and find data and share different things, versus a seller who's prepared and dialed in and ready to go. It's actually an easy process.
Yeah. And if like when I sold my business, there were daily things that I had to do every day because I didn't run my business with today's efficiencies, but I had that all dialed in. And the couple that bought my business, when there was a problem, all I had to go is page 2. Okay, this happens, then you do this, that type of thing. Otherwise, they would have been on a call with me on a regular basis, and I would have had to spend time with them. When I didn't want to spend time with them, I wanted to go to the beach, type of thing.
Which is why you sold the business.
which is why I sold the business. So documentation is really key. SOPs, accrual financials on your P&Ls. Use QuickBooks or Excel. Hire, an outsourced bookkeeper. If I look back when I first was an entrepreneur, I paid a bookkeeper to come to my office every day. And, I think I paid her like $24,000, right? She was just out of college. You can hire, and she did a terrible job, by the way. She just did a terrible job. And it wasn't accrual. It wasn't right. And don't have your CPA do it, because your CPA is just going to do cash, because that's the way they'll probably be filing your tax returns. Should be in an accrual. They can check the box for a cash P&L when they're going to file their tax returns. But you can hire a great online bookkeeper for a fraction of that $24,000 a year, or they'd probably be $40,000 a year now. For $1,000, you can get a really incredibly qualified e-commerce bookkeeper. I have one for a little side business. It's $60 a month. Okay, it's something that everybody should be doing. But the SOPs, the history of the business, everything that you've got, your financials, that's really incredibly important. If you don't have a P&L, if you're going to work with an advisor and you want them to sell your business and you don't have a P&L to share, then you're not even getting off first base.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good information. And that's stuff people can do today. These are,
you don't want to do it though.
Well, no, it's not fun stuff, but
no, it's awful stuff. But I try to put everything in the book so that it's at least absorbable, right? You can refer back to it. You can read some stories about some people that totally screwed up and go, I almost did that. Thank God it wasn't me. And then you can read about somebody that, took an extra hour out of their day to hire an e-commerce bookkeeper and then had to spend more hours with them to get it going, and that they made a fortune. Those types of, monetizing that type of investment and return on investment, I think is really essential for, entrepreneurs. Even today, I was like, okay, well, you're talking to me about this. How much of a bump am I going to get for this? That's always what we look at.
Mm-hmm.
And now what I talk about in the book, so many things you can go, okay, if I do this, and once you understand the value of your business, you'll understand what kind of financial bump you can get in terms of, why it's important to do it. Because when you sell your business, you'll get X more amount of money for your business.
Well, you might be surprised by this audience, because I would say that a lot of people in this audience rely on SEO, on search engine optimization, to grow their business. And that is a long slog with not a lot of payoff in the beginning.
Yeah.
So, this might just be everybody's cup of tea here on this podcast.
I hope so. Because there's
You're
some
telling
things
me
in there
that I can do a lot of work now for a big return down the road. Well, that's what we all get up and do every day right now. So I don't know. It might be pretty attractive to people. Hey, final question on the buying side of things. I have a couple other questions if we have time to get to them I want to ask. But who's buying these online businesses, and again, maybe we can delineate between like a content style site, and or affiliate, if you want to lump those together, versus buying. You talked about aggregators, but they're mostly focused on the e-commerce or the FBA businesses, if I understand correctly. Just go through who's buying these sites so we can kind of get an avatar in our head of them.
Yeah. So a little bit depends upon the size of the business, right? So if it's a $5 million business, it might be a private equity firm dipping down into the space, right? Generally, that's too small for them, but they're starting to pay much more attention. $5-10 million. They're going to be looking at that. Content sites, everybody's buying them, right? Content sites are some of my favorite to sell. As long as they're strong and well balanced and low risk, there's going to be lots and lots of buyers for it. And that buyer, could be just somebody that wants to quit their corporate job. They may roll over some retirement funds to make the purchase. They may use the HELOC. They may do an SBA loan, whatever they can do to buy the business. Oftentimes, it's somebody that sold a business recently in the last, say, 12 to 24 months, and they know that long slog of building up SEO over 12 to 24 months is not something they want to do, and that the risk is actually higher, right? 96% of startups fail. Why not just go out and buy one that's already successful? And so it's individuals that are doing that. It's groups that are doing that. People that are experts in e-commerce, pulling together their money and creating a fund. And then private equity firms as well are coming down. And then, of course, there's the aggregators as well. But it's the same for content sites. It's individuals, it's partners, it's prior owners of those types of sites building a portfolio and I'd lump affiliate into the content aspect of it as well, right? And then the SaaS businesses, those are actually the same. They're just, people that are a little bit more tech savvy and aware. And then on the agency side, we don't do as many agencies, but it's as long as the owner of the agency is completely replaceable, and you have to get to a certain size and staff overhead in order to be able to do that. And then, of course, on the e-commerce side, everybody can buy an e-commerce business because something can actually understand, right? It's a physical product. They hold it in their hands and goes, yeah, I get that. I understand. It's really hard for the average, person that is not deep into SaaS to understand what the hell, a particular type of SaaS business is, or, try to explain, to my brother, who's only 2 years older than I am, that's a CAD designer for Bath Ironworks in Maine. Try to explain to him how a content site makes money, and he can't wrap his head around it, but he knows, how to sell. He understands that somebody's selling cell phone cases, and that's how they make money. So e-commerce physical products is probably the broadest band of people. It is the individuals, it's the groups, it's the investors, it's the prior owners of these businesses that are buying and then building, as opposed to building and hoping it will grow someday. They're trying to shorten that cycle. And then, of course, it's the aggregators that are dipping down into space or building up the FBA space that are buying those.
Fascinating. It's so interesting to see some of this investment money come into this space that previously didn't, play here. So that's really interesting to hear about.
Do you understand the full circle of why they're doing that, especially the FBA aggregators? And this would really apply to all, because there are aggregators now that are showing up as aggregators of content businesses, aggregators of SaaS businesses as well.
My understanding extends as far as understand, like, it makes sense when you start to think where a lot of them they're able to use their leverage as a bigger organization to negotiate better payouts and better rates. And so they can go in and buy a business where I might just be getting paid a flat rate by someone, a standard rate, and they already have a negotiated rate that's much higher than that. So I know about that, but from the FBA aggregation side of things, I'm sure there's a lot of holes that could be filled in.
Well, look, go back to the risk part of it, right? So the lower the risk, the higher the multiple. And if you own one content SaaS or FBA business that is generating $1 million a year in profit for you, discretionary earnings, your multiple is only set to a certain amount. But imagine if you own 20 of those businesses or 40 or 50, you're not at a 4 or 5 or 6 time multiple anymore. When you own one, you might be in that 4 to 6 time multiple range. But when you own 20, you're in that 12 to 15 time multiple range. So they've got a portfolio of businesses, right?
So they're flattening the risk profile out with every acquisition they make.
Yeah, they go out and buy it at a 3 time or 4 time multiple. They put it in their portfolio, and it's instantly worth 9 to 12 times.
Instantly.
That's how they're making money, is on that value. Then they're able to go out and get more debt to go ahead and buy more of them. Thras might go public.
Right.
Razor just got a $1 billion valuation. And there's a ton of money. A guy that I've sold 5 businesses to, I think now at this point. He's just a guy, right? He was working at Retail Me Not, and then went out and bought a business and did that on a side hustle, then bought another, and he's able to quit his job. He just raised $53 million to go out and buy more online businesses. Okay. There's so much money out there. I saw somebody post the other day, which one's going to fail first or something like that. It's already happened. Some of them have already failed, but for the most part, the value proposition is buy low. It instantly becomes worth a lot more in their portfolio the moment it goes into it.
And see, this goes back to it. I fall into the trap of, I'm sure so many listening, where we think in terms of our single site sale. And so your book was eye-opening from a number of different areas. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think is really important to get across on this topic?
God, no, I went off on tangents. I think we covered most of it. The only thing that I'd say is I wrote the book so that I could reach more people, because even though I talked to 8,000 people one-on-one, there's another, 900,000, online business owners that are not comfortable talking to a broker. Some of those 8,000 weren't comfortable talking to a broker advisor. So it's a great stepping stone, to learn without actually having to talk to someone if you're not comfortable with that yet. And unfortunately, some brokerage firms, broker agencies have done things that give a stigma to the broker. And you may not see their value. Maybe you'll see the value in the book, or maybe it will be eye-opening, like you said it would be for you in understanding the value of your own business. And maybe you'll have enough information to, if you insist on going it alone, it will give you some protection and help you get more value than if you didn't have the book. I'm confident of that.
And even doubling down on that, I think that certainly in my own mind, so I'll just speak for myself, but I imagine I represent a lot of the same thoughts as others. When you think of brokerage, when you think of going to a brokerage, when you think of having conversations with brokerages, it's around the same time you're thinking of selling your business. And the very nature of your book talks about how start thinking about the sale now before you're actually ready to sell. And so this book allows you to kind of have that conversation well in advance of when you need to have the actual conversation.
Yeah. And now is not the day you start the business. Now is when you're, 12 months in, when you're no longer just trying to keep the wheels on the bus and
keep the lights on,
make $1, right? Yeah. Keep the lights on. You've got a business that you go, okay, this actually is making me money. How much could I sell it for? Because the reality is that for most businesses, not all, but for most business, at least 50% of all the money you're ever going to make in the business comes the day that you sell it. Think about some of the richest people in the world. They didn't make it by building a business and holding it forever. They made it by selling it. Even the Mark Zuckerbergs, he went public. That's a sale, right?
Right.
They didn't make it just by building and operating a business. They made it by building a business and selling it. And that's the quickest path to true wealth or true financial freedom.
Mm-hmm. Well, Joe, thank you again. The book is the Exitpreneur's Playbook. Thank you for joining us. It was a really fun conversation. That hour flew by. Where can people get more information on you and the book?
The book can be found at exitpreneur.io, or you could, of course, find it on Amazon. Just search for the Exitpreneur's Playbook. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter. The handle is at the Joe Valley, not because I'm that the Joe Valley, just because Joe Valley was taken. So
Joe Valley was already taken.
He was already taken. Yeah. So,
Good. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. It was a really great conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Talk soon. Thanks again to Ahrefs, today's show sponsor. And again, if you're looking for more Google traffic, if you're struggling to rank, you're not sure what to do about it, and the idea of hiring an SEO agency is just outside of your budget, they have a free tool. It's called the Ahrefs Webmaster Tools. It's an amazing resource. It's going to help you audit your website. It's going to prioritize the needed changes you need to make to improve your search rankings. Imagine what you could achieve as more traffic starts to come in. Beyond the leads and the sales, you're going to have Ahrefs Webmaster Tools helping you analyze your backlinks from other websites. They're going to help you find the important people that are referencing your content. Can help lead to future partnerships, collaborations. You get the hint. The idea of getting Google to work for you sounds a bit too confusing. Ahrefs also offers a lot of helpful tutorials on search engine optimization. So the time is now. It's a free tool, and you can go grab it by visiting ahrefs.com/webmaster-tools. Again, that's ahrefs.com/webmaster-tools. We've included a link in the show notes. Thanks again to Ahrefs for sponsoring today's podcast.